The WAFB Podcast Network is sponsored by Neighbors Federal Credit Union.
Hey, good morning, Jacques. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. I'm talking to Garth Brooks.
Entering his second year as the LSU head football coach.
It was the only way I could get a foot in the door.
Joined by the icon, Kim Mulkey. Hey, Coach, great to see you.
Jacques Talk is sponsored by Cork's Cajun Fried Fish and Shrimp and Couillon's Cajun Barbecue.
They only see the one that airs. Welcome to Jacques Talk, another great edition of LSU football discussion. I guess we got to live up to it. I said it's going to be great.
You might be jumping the gun there, JD.
Matt Moscona joins us from across the street, ESPN Radio, 104.5 FM. And I just want to say, just quick kudos to you. The times, I guess maybe I've had a chance to guest host your show, I don't know, 10 times. I've been knowing you so long, so it might have been like twice a year for a while. And I would go in there, I'd line up guests, I'd come in with all this energy, really focusing on pronouncing each word and speaking really well on the radio. And then it's like an hour and a half in, I'm like, man, I am gassed. And I got another hour and a half to go.
That's interesting, Jacques, because the time that I did the sportscast for you was so easy. All I did was stand there and read a teleprompter for 3 minutes, and I was done. Call it a day.
What you do is really easy. What I do is really difficult. I mean, but it's the truth, though. And then just to think that I'm just doing that once. You're doing that 5 times a week. And then you're doing the morning scone. You're doing stuff at night. I mean, you have endless energy. Who is your, sponsor for your what do they call that?
Energy drinks?
You don't have low T and all that stuff they talk about on the radio.
No energy drinks or anything like that. But it's I love to talk about sports. We're very lucky, Jacques. I'll never complain about anything. Like, we get to talk about sports and cover sports, and we get paid to do it.
Right.
There's a lot of hours, and there's a lot that goes into it, a lot that people don't always understand. But I mean, we ain't digging ditches or building the railroad, man.
No.
We're sitting down. We're sitting in a room. A palatial room. I love your studio, by the way.
Good stuff here. Our WAFB team has done a great job of building a very professional studio.
Last time we were just in the lobby in 2 directors' chairs. You need to have me back more often, JD.
The audio sounds great, and the video looks terrific. So we're happy to be here. And yes, and it's a good thing that I'm not digging ditches or trying to work on a roof, because I get soaking wet just watching LSU football practice.
Hey, man, but that's another thing. Yes, it's hot. We all sweat. But, as long as you've covered – what was your first season, 99? Is that right?
I started at Channel 9 in 2001.
Okay, so 01. My first season was 07. So this is my 18th season covering LSU. I had a lot more hair back then, Jacques. But I can never remember a time. Not only can I not remember, we never have had a time where we've had more access than we do now.
Yeah.
Les would let us in for 10 minutes, and then the first time someone tweaked an ankle and someone reported that so-and-so wasn't there, then he kicked us out. We get 3 practices total. I think at the onset, Ed was trying to win a lot of favor, right?
When he was the interim in 16.
Yes.
He was having us. I remember going to an LSU Alabama practice on a Wednesday for 45 minutes and feeling like it was an out-of-body experience,
He got, Derek Panamsky gave him good advice. He knew where the pain points were with the media and the fans, and it helped him win favor, and he got the job and ultimately won a national championship. But this is, I think the access that Kelly gives us is not only unprecedented at LSU, it's unprecedented in all of college football. I don't think anybody gets this type of access at the major college level.
We got a lot of videos and things we want to show you here in a second. I don't want to get too caught off on story time, but certainly I remember Les Miles' final year in 2016. I think we might have gone to 2 or 3 practices for 5 minutes, and it just got so intense and paranoid that they told us to turn the cameras off because they had a trips lined up. The 3 wide receivers lined up on one side.
In the Les Miles Cam Cameron offense, that was a little mind-blowing there.
And then they go out to Wisconsin and they roll out that game plan. It's like, okay, you had us turn off the cameras for that. So let's just show a little video. Brian Kelly entering year 3 as the LSU head coach. I'd say in year 1 he did a A- job taking that team to the SEC championship last year. What would you say? B-, C+? Offense was amazing. Defense was not amazing.
Offense was all-time great. So A+ on the offense and a failing grade on defense. So you average that out, it's got to be a C. It was just an average year by the standards you should have expected.
You take a look at some practice, and as we've talked about, look, this is not breaking news. It's hot in South Louisiana in the middle of August, but these guys are earning their keep to run out of that tunnel. Now, I'm sure the Kevin Mawais of the world will tell us about the 3-a-days with Curly Holman, 3-a-days, practice in the morning, special teams at noon, practice again in the afternoon.
It's unbelievable they ever got away with that.
But the acclimation period, acclimatization, I think they're
Climatization is what Brian Kelly said. Climatization.
So in the beginning, it's like 30 minutes outside, then we're getting up to an hour. So eventually, they're going to be 2 hours of practice outside, and so
which is interesting though. Just as a random aside, they're playing the opener indoors.
Yeah.
So at some point, I would think maybe game week they start to practice more in the indoor facility to sort of simulate what it's going to be like actually in Las Vegas.
That's the old cliche, right? The practices will be 100 times harder than the games. The games are supposed to be easy once you show up, right? At least in terms of your conditioning and all that. Let's listen to Brian Kelly in terms of how LSU will win games this year and perhaps their identity.
You know, quite frankly, the football team that we're going to put on the field this year, I think, is going to be a much more balanced team. You know, those three guys that made big plays for us last year are not going to come walking through the door for us this year, you know, and I'm referring to Daniels and obviously Neighbors and Brian Thomas. So offensively, we're going to have to be much more efficient, much more balanced, and defensively, obviously, we're going to have to be much improved over last year. But more importantly, we're going to have to win close games. We're going to have to be mentally strong late in games, and we're going to have that kind of mindset that, you know, when things get difficult, we're going to be able to overcome and win, and in particular on the road. So,
a little Rick Pitino with the Boston Celtics there, you know, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Jaden Daniels aren't walking through that door.
Yeah.
So what do you think of this offense right now?
I know it sounds so absurd to think you can lose the Heisman winner, 2 first-rounders, your Broyles Award finalist, offensive play caller, Mike Denbrock as well. But, Jacques, I mean, you're out there. It's just an embarrassment of riches. I mean, you go look at the play Xavier Thomas made when we got to watch the other day. They're playing it's a goal line session, and Xavier Thomas goes up and makes this one-handed grab on the back line. He's what, the 5th or 6th best guy on this team right now? I mean, there's no shortage of options there. The offensive line might be the best in program history. I don't think that's a mouthful. I mean, they should have 2 first-round picks. LSU hadn't had a first-round pick on the offensive line since Alan Faneca in 1998, man.
Wow.
I mean, that's the last one.
Yeah.
Now, Lyle would have been, but for the unfortunate circumstances on draft night, but still.
Yeah.
So
even your Ethan Posick and guys like that.
They've had a lot of good ones,
Yeah.
you know, but this is just kind of a different level as far as translatable talent to the NFL level. So, yeah, man, I think the offense is going to be fine, Jacques. I don't know that they lead the nation in scoring and total offense like they did a year ago, but, I mean, I would expect they're going to be a top 10, top 15 offense in the country, and if you're that, I mean, then you should be good enough to beat anybody you play. Not to say you're going to win any game you play, but you should be good enough to be able to beat anybody you play.
Yeah. Got some more offense we'll talk about here later in the show, but let's lead into the defense. Blake Baker taking over, of course, linebackers coach with LSU in 2021. A lot of credit to him for developing Damone Clark the way that he did. And a younger coach, I believe he's 42 years old, got the LSU baseball hat on.
Oh, my God. What edge.
Kind of sets him apart, right?
That isn't just like the baseball logo. That is the fitted, like that's like 7 3/8. I mean, he's got the fitted baseball hat on. I love it.
Let me dig for a Jay Johnson impression real quick. It's awesome. Just love it. It's awesome. Okay.
Very good.
And he's got the cleats on as well. He's
man.
Connecting with the younger players. When we've gone out there, the other day we saw Harold Perkins get his hand on a football and Parashan intercept it. We've seen, what's our guy there, number 1 defensive back, Ashton Stamps. The other day we were walking in and Nussmeier threw a ball to the end zone. Stamps intercepted it and brought it out. So we are seeing some turnovers. We're seeing some life. We're hearing some cheering and some camaraderie. The defense seems to be building itself up a bit.
They got definitely a different energy. When there was a pass that went into the sideline, hit Baker, and he dropped it. He dropped down and started doing push-ups.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that kind of thing. The other day when they were in a team period and you know it was a 2-minute end of game type scenario and the offense lines up for a 55-yard field goal, there's Like offense is on one sideline, defense is on the other. The defense is 40 guys, and they're like trying to make noise to distract the kicker. It's like there's 40 of you. It's not like 40,000 or but they don't care. I mean, I think that's the sort of pervasive attitude that Blake Baker has brought. And the other thing too, Jacques, that I think aside from just the mindset and the attitude defensively, they have simplified so much that one thing that you just don't really see is guys with their palms up, pointing at their teammates. Like I think they've just, especially in the secondary, have simplified to such a rudimentary level that it was like, let's get rid of the coverage busts first so everybody knows where they're supposed to be, and then start building on top of that. And I think that's what we've started to see with some of the different looks and formations, especially in the front seven this week.
Well, that's what I was joking about with Mike Scarborough last week. We're in an election year, right? And we've had these slogans and campaigns, and the one we keep hearing is paralysis by analysis. They don't want that, right? They felt like they were thinking way too much. And you listen to a guy like Whit Weeks, and he goes, Whit Weeks, if you're ever in a bad mood and you just want like some good, pure college energy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Oh, yes, sir. We're having such a good time,
The Georgia boy, man.
He's great. He's great. I mean, he's just like, we're not thinking as much. It's fun. We know we were bad on defense last year. That's not happening again, sir, and all that. So you do kind of you feel that, and you hear that from Harold Perkins and Savion Jones, all the guys we've interviewed so far.
But Jacques, yes, and they were quite. Look, LSU's played football since 1893, right? Last year was statistically the worst defense in the history of the program. They have never allowed as many yards and points as they did last year. They can't be worse. I mean, so yeah, they're going to be better. Of course they're going to be better. They would have to literally be, again, the worst defense in the history of the program, which I don't think they will be. But how much better can they be? Do they go from 108 to 88? Do they go from 108 to 58? Do they go from 108 to 38? I mean, that's kind of, I think, the gap that closes between if the offense scales back a smidge, the defense improves. How much do you close that gap? I think that's the big question.
And we'll get our Blake Baker sound ready here in a second. Not to bore you in numbers, but yes, LSU gave up 28 points a game last year. That included I think they shut out Army.
Yeah.
So that improved things. I mean, the SEC numbers. I mean, obviously they gave up 55 at Ole Miss and lost. They gave up 42 at Alabama.
Yeah, gave up an average of 38 in their losses.
416 yards.
48 in their losses.
Yeah, that's Catholic high education coming through for us.
Yeah.
And they gave up Florida State scored 45 or something.
I don't math.
416 yards per game they gave up, 45% on third down. That's nearly half. They only intercepted 10 passes. They only recovered 4 fumbles. They 89% opposition scored in the red zone, 41 out of 46, and 72% of those red zone scores were touchdowns.
Unbelievable.
33 out of 46. This was Blake Baker. It's been a few days, but this is what he had to say about trying to shape this defense.
What I want it to be or what we are right now. Right now, I'll be honest, we're inconsistent. What I want it to be, if we do our job, I think we got a chance to be pretty good. I really do. I think we have all the pieces in place to have a good defense. What I want to see is a little more player-led accountability and guys just doing their job on a consistent basis. If we do that, we can have a good year. We're not there yet, but I think we have really good speed. I think we're physical. We're still improving as a tackling unit right now, but we have shown improvement from the spring.
Coach Kelly and several of your players have talked about paralysis by analysis. That's what they want to avoid, and that they're doing less thinking, and it's more playing football. Can you speak to that and what you're implementing from that aspect?
Absolutely. I think our scheme is very user-friendly, very player-friendly, and I think our guys are playing really fast, sometimes too fast, and that's sometimes part of our inconsistency right now. But in all honesty, that's okay. Sometimes you'd rather have to pull the chain back than have to kick them on the booty on the way out the door.
You talked about guys throwing their hands up. I always remember, was that 2013 game, LSU Georgia? Jalen Mills and those guys were jumping around looking at each other on the bus and everything. So Coach Baker has come up with a term called poodles. And I'm like, is that the dog or is that the first 3 letters of the word? So apparently it describes that. We don't want poodles. We don't want guys throwing their hands up if there's a bus. We don't want guys avoiding contact. Apparently, Sheldon Mickles did a very nice article on it. It's when he grades the players, they may get some poodles. And they don't want that.
Like a little sticker. You put a little poodle sticker there. No, I mean, look, whatever a coach can do to maximize his players, I'm for it if it resonates. But I think everybody's different. Look, calling them poodles or however they're going to do that, it'll work for some. It probably won't work for all their guys. But yes, if ultimately what you get is buy-in, Jacques, look, the bottom line is, and everybody knows it, by the end of that season, none of those defensive guys wanted to play for Matt House. They were so bad. They didn't buy into what he said. His message didn't translate. So they needed a new voice. And so they've gone to sort of the antithesis. It's sort of a 180. And that often happens whenever you fire a coach because it doesn't work. You tend to hire the opposite of that coach. Yeah. And I think that's what they've done here with Blake Baker. They've gone young, energetic guy, and you're getting a lot of buy-in from these players.
And I've said it a lot recently. I know for a fact that Brian Kelly thought that Matt House was the most intelligent defensive coordinator he perhaps had ever worked with. But
Tyrann Mathieu raved about him. Said it was one of the best defensive coaches he'd ever worked or played for in Kansas City.
But the message was lost. And look, I never wanted to get any kind of attention for some stupid video I shot at the end of this bowl game.
We know you hated Matt House and you were trying to get him fired. Everybody knows the truth.
I got along with Matt. I like him, and I'm sure he'll do well in Jacksonville. But there was a lot of reaction to the way the players did not respond to him in the celebration after they beat Wisconsin on the field.
I will tell you, and I don't mind saying this in this format or any format, Jock, but I don't think everybody knows you didn't have any. Like, you're doing your job. Like, you're filming a post.
I thought I was shooting a happy moment.
Well,
you won. They're celebrating. But.
And if you haven't seen the video we're talking about, it was after the bowl game, and Matt House was going, who's in the press box, was going to like dap up some of the players, and he kind of got the cold shoulder from a lot of the defensive linemen.
Yeah, Mekhi Wingo.
And Mekhi Wingo was, that's a guy who had abdominal surgery and came back to play a bowl game when other guys opt out, right?
Made some sacks late in the game.
But yeah, I think it was, whatever that moment meant, I'm not trying to make too much of it, but there were enough people whose opinions mattered that started asking questions after that, because Jacques, I was told in no uncertain terms that Matt House was going to be retained. Mm-hmm. He was going to be retained, and he had been told he was going to be retained. Mm-hmm. And then the right people started asking questions after that, and thankfully that they made a change, because I think we're going to see that was going to be a change for the better.
Yeah, there's, like you said, can't be any worse. And and not to go too, we need to move forward, but I thought in Brian Kelly's first year, I thought defense was the reason why they won some games. Like the Alabama game was 7-6 at the half. I think the Ole Miss game, Ole Miss jumped out on them early, but then I think LSU totally shut them down after that. Lane Kiffin's offense and everything in Tiger Stadium. B.J.
Ojulari was a great player, probably a very underrated player in this era. Mm-hmm. But they also hit on all the transfers in the secondary, Jacques. Right. Jark Bernard Converse, Mekhi Garner, Joe Fouché, Greg Brooks. They hit on all those guys. It was just the dramatic difference year to year when you hit on all your portal guys and when you miss on all your portal guys. And that's what happened a year ago.
Yeah, last year was an air ball. There's lots of air balls last year with Deuce Chestnut and Denver Harris and those guys. Let's talk about a new addition to the team, Gio Pz.
Yeah.
Defensive lineman from Wisconsin. He did some good things at Wisconsin. He was not an all-conference player or a star player or any of those things. But, and that right there is JVR Suggs, number 31. He comes to LSU from Grand Valley State. So those are the two big additions in the transfer portal. Had a chance to talk to Pz this week. Really enjoyed listening to him. Here's what he had to say about joining LSU and the Purple and Gold.
I think physicality, I bring a mentality, I bring leadership. I've been in this college football realm this is going on my 6th season. I'm 23, but every single year I'm just stacking experience, stacking relatability amongst other people. You know, we have a room with not a lot of experience, and I need to be able to convey a message to them in a certain way, depending on the person, and I'm here to do my job.
I think, Matt, you were one of the first people to interview Gio on the radio. And like him?
There's something that Pz said when I talked to him right after he committed that reminded me of Joe Burrow. I'm not saying he's going to have the impact of Joe Burrow. I'm saying there was something he said which resonated. It was when he came on his recruiting visit, he didn't want to do the photos. He didn't want to wear the uniform. He didn't want to go in the stadium. And Burrow was the same. You've heard all the stories about Burrow's recruiting visit. It was all ball. It was, how are you going to use me? How are we going to maximize? And Pz, you heard him say in that clip there, is a 6th-year player. He's been playing at Wisconsin in a 3-4, so he's been an end in a 3-4. And in a 3-4, the job of an end is eat up blocks to free up the linebackers to go make plays. Mm-hmm. I'm oversimplifying it, but that's effectively it.
Right.
He said he was not considering any place that ran anything other than a 4-3 because he wants to move inside where he can start affecting the offense and start making plays because he realizes this is it for him, for his football future to get to the NFL. He's got to go somewhere where he can be disruptive. And that really resonated. It wasn't about the recruiting visit. It wasn't about NIL. It wasn't about any of that. It was literally about where's the best opportunity for me to go have an awesome season to get to the NFL. And that was very reminiscent of what Burrow said when he came to Baton Rouge. So look, Jacques, the defensive line, I don't know that they have any guys on there on the interior that are NFL draft guys. I don't know if Pz will be. Tank, Jacoby Guillory is their best guy right now. In the future, I think Don McKinley certainly could be. But what they have are a bunch of old dudes, a bunch of dudes that are in their 5th and 6th year, 22, 23-year-old guys. And sometimes it matters, man. Like the difference between being 18, 19, 20, just physically developing and maturing, than when you're 21, 22, 23. And when you think about Suggs and Guillory and Pz and Jalen Lee and Sean Washington, by the way, Sean or Shone, what do you say?
I asked Bonnet the other day. I think we had decided it was Shone, but
okay. I'm going to ask him if we get a chance to talk to him. But anyway, you have a bunch of old veteran guys that I think does probably favor LSU a little bit on that defensive line. I don't think they're going to be great there, man, but I think they have a lot to be optimistic about.
What about Kimo Macanoli?
That one,
it's a wild card, huh? I mean, what's he going to do?
That was one of those in spring where, I mean, look, we all talked about it, right? They were so thin on numbers, they had to go get defensive tackles that they flipped Kimo to the offense, from offense to defense because they needed bodies. Now he's stuck, but Jacques, I don't know. I've watched Kimo a lot. He was running on the 2D. He's been running on the 2 deep in fall camp, at least before Jalen Lee came back out there. I think now he's probably in that 3 deep alongside Don McKinley. But maybe he's a fresh body late in the game, but physicality at the point of attack, not quite as big as you'd like to see. I don't know that he's the prototype defensive lineman that you'd love to see at LSU, but I can respect the guy sticking it out and trying to make an impact somewhere.
It's going to be fascinating to watch, Matt, because I think I listened to you on the radio and you talking about it. It's like they look the part. They all look like big, strong dudes. They fill out the uniform. They look like the Michael Brockers of the world and whatnot, but really is a mystery. And if you go out against USC first game and they rush for 250, 275, it's not a case of, well, we can get better, is it? I mean, it's like, these are the guys we got, and what are we going to do? It's not like a quarterback who has a bad game. We can coach him up, and he'll, I just don't know. That's the fascinating thing.
If a Lincoln Riley offense runs for 275 in a game, you got major. Now, I can see Lincoln Riley's offense throwing for 475, which God forbid, but that's just the way that offense is styled. I don't think they're going to run the ball that way.
Good point.
I think more so in that game, what you're looking for is sideline to sideline defense. I'm looking for Harold Perkins, for Whit Weeks, for those guys to run in space. I'm looking for some of the young guys, Jacques. Like, I don't know how you feel about it. You're out there like I am. The 2 freshman defensive ends, Kalaj Cobbins and Gabe Relaford, Jacques, those guys that's what it's supposed to look like. Mm-hmm. Those guys, hopefully they stay and have long, great careers here at LSU. Those guys look like all SEC, all American defensive ends. And the more they keep recruiting guys like that, the closer LSU is obviously going to get to being what we expect an LSU defense to look like.
Small chatting with Brian Kelly at SEC Media Days. Gabe Relaford was a guy that he brought up. That they were
He's awesome.
They're very high on.
Jacques, they run these pass rush drills. He wins darn near every time, man. These one-on-one pass rush drills. Him and Kalaj Cobbins. They can't block him.
Yeah, and in his latest press conference, Coach Kelly referenced Kevin Peoples and called him the best in America in terms of coaching ends. And during his press conference, Blake Baker said, in today's modern college football, you can't have one-line coach coaching the inside and the outside. You need it more specialized.
Yeah, and Kevin Peoples and Bo Davis are both from the Pete Jenkins tree. Like, they both learned fundamentally in those Pete Jenkins techniques. So, Brian Kelly has a ton of respect for Coach Pete, bringing him on last year the way he did to help midseason. And I certainly think you're seeing some of the residual there.
Yeah. The old Jedi Master, Pete Jenkins. Saw him at his annual lineman camp in Thibodaux over the summer. And he told me, they got the best coaches in the country. Do they have the personnel? I don't know. Which obviously they're recruiting the personnel. I mean, 2025, 6, 7, whatever down the road. But obviously we're talking about LSU playing a game in 2 weeks against USC. So let's go down the stretch here and talk about some offense. Garrett Nussmeier, a fan topic for many years. During Jaden Daniels' first year at LSU, you heard a lot of Jaden doesn't throw the ball down the field, put Garrett Nussmeier in the game, and then last year,
not from me, bro. Never heard that from me.
Jaden, well, I'm just.
No, I know.
It was out there.
I know.
Jaden wins the Heisman last year, and no one is talking about Nuss should have played. So, look, Garrett's been a great dude. He said all the right things. He doesn't get involved in social media garbage. Son of a coach. Lively arm, can make all the throws, right? Yep. So your impressions of Garrett Nussmeier. Let it rip here. That's Chris Hilton, I think.
He can spin it, man.
Number 3 there, Chris Hilton.
Chris Hilton's going to. I'll make a prediction for you, Jacques. You ready?
Yes.
All right, Jacques. Jacques. I think your top 2 receivers by receptions and receiving yards this season are going to be Kyron Lacey and C.J. Daniels. But I think Chris Hilton will lead LSU in receiving touchdowns. Okay. I think he reminds me a lot when I watch him in this offense of how they used Brian Thomas last year. You need the big play downfield, they're going to 3. And he's got such top end speed. I know you saw him at Zachary, you covered him plenty. He's hard to handle downfield, and I think you're going to see those double-digit touchdowns, that big play potential from Chris Hilton. As far as Nuss checks every box, man. I often say if you go to Central Casting and you draw up a quarterback, it probably looks like that. Good size, can make every throw, confidence, borderline athletically cocky, son of a coach, high football IQ, all of it. The only thing he doesn't have is experience, and sometimes he puts the ball in harm's way. So, can we see Nuss instead of, there was a play we were watching, a 2-minute drill, Nuss drives him 80 yards down the field. They're in a goal-to-go situation. Pats the ball, throws it over the middle. Ashton Stamps jumps in front and picks him off. Can Nuss in a game situation throw that ball through the back of the end zone and live to play another down? That's the thing we need to see from him. But it's the one blemish that people can come up with Garrett right now, because everything else looks the part. I think that's a big reason why I'm very optimistic about this offense, because Jacques, if something, God forbid, were to happen to Garrett and you had to go to Ricky Collins or A.J. Swan, the expectation for this season dramatically changes.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to speak that into existence, but I was going to say it myself, because we were all standing there more than once saying, if Garrett Nussmeier gets hurt, this team is up you-know-what creek without a paddle.
Yeah, and look, and you could say that for any team, but Jacques, a year ago, as dynamic as Jaden was, he was awesome. You had Garrett, who's a third-year player and tons of potential and had been around for a long time. And with those receivers, we saw him spin it. Look, he won the bowl game, and even with a 98-yard touchdown drive, even with opt-outs. Like, Garrett was able. The 2 young guys you have right now aren't what Garrett was a year ago. So, yes, you want to have the whole who's the most indispensable player on the team. Of course, it's Garrett Nussmeier. The big question then is who would it be after that? And not to nitpick a guy who threw for almost 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, and like you said, brought him down to win the game against Wisconsin. But late in the first half, remember, he forced that ball that got picked, and Wisconsin was in position. They didn't score. But those are the kind of plays he's looking to eliminate, and he doesn't like being labeled a gunslinger and all that. But I think LSU threw 4 or 5 interceptions all of last year. They're going to throw more than that this year. Yeah, I think did Jaden have 3 or 4? I can't remember if he had 3 or 4. I looked it up. I think they only threw like 5 picks all year. But here is Jaden Daniels was good.
Yes, pretty surgical. Let's listen to Garrett Nussmeier and what he had to say about camp and the way he's leading this offense.
It's easy to get lost and it's hot and this is tough, but I mean, anybody would, dream of being out here, and we get that opportunity. So it's been, just keeping our head down and pushing through all the heat and all the adversity that comes our way. But I love camp, and I think we've done a really good job of embracing that. I mean, obviously there's a different dynamic, going from being a backup to the starter. But, I feel like, it's just taking the same approach that I've always taken, just trying to lead, be vocal, be an uplifting spirit, keep the guys going. Coach Sloan's talking a lot about being intentional with everything we do, and having integrity and being focused. Locked in focus is something he says all the time. I think we're a very, very close-knit group. I think we've really meshed together, very, very well from the spring to summer to now. And, it's 3 weeks until the game. There's not much time left. And, I think we've done an outstanding job coming together. kind of establishing our identity of who we want to be. I think we're going to be explosive and very physical. I mean, it's going to be something that's fun to watch.
We saw Mason Taylor in some of those clips. 36 catches last year for 348 and 1 touchdown. I think that's going up this year. I think he's going to catch a lot of passes.
Well, especially because last year with Malik and Brian Thomas, they just gobbled up so many of the targets, and justifiably so, because even when one was double covered, the other was open, and I don't want to say it was a crutch. It was the right decision to make to force the ball to those two guys. This year, I'll be interested to see how they spread it around. But yeah, Mason Taylor, look, Thad Moss set the single-season tight end receiving records for LSU for catches, yards. Mason Taylor should surpass those this year. And, Jock, maybe the most impressive thing about Mason Taylor, he's up to like 255. Remember, when he signed, he was a 3-star, around 230. He has physically grown into his body. When Brian Kelly talks about wanting to recruit and develop, I think that's what he envisions. You recruit a guy, he grows into his body, becomes a better player as he keeps going on. I mean, I saw ESPN put out a list of, projected the top players at 10 positions for next year's draft. It was Jordan Reed at ESPN. He had Mason Taylor as the best tight end in the draft for next year as an early entrant. So that's the type of talent Mason Taylor has grown into, and like scouts are noticing.
Coach Kelly at his recent press conference too talked about Kamorian Pimpton, who is 6'6" and has made a lot of athletic catches out there. But Kelly pointed out, he said in the beginning he didn't want to do the dirty work. He didn't want to do the tight end dirty work, and now he's packed on some weight and is now blocking and doing some of that dirty work. Let's talk about another wide receiver. You mentioned him, C.J. Daniels, joining the team this year from Liberty. And I guess the big question is, how does his game translate from Liberty to LSU? Look, 55 receptions last year, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. His team won 13 games, and they got the Fiesta Bowl, and they got squashed. But let's listen to C.J. and his thoughts on joining LSU and trying to play SEC football.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't have the confidence. This is the biggest stage of football, as close as you can get to the NFL. So for me coming here, you have to bring the juice, have to bring confidence, and I think I have that. LSU was the perfect spot for me just because of the legacy of receivers, and I've been an LSU fan just based off like the receivers that come in and out each of the years. So that's probably the biggest reason.
I don't think he's going to be this way at all. The most infamous transfer in terms of numbers he produced at his previous school.
Oh, I know where you're going.
To LSU. And look, I don't want to pile on the kid, because every year when the 7 comes up, they bring it up. And Jonathan Giles. It was at Texas
Guns
Tech.
Yeah.
They brought
Poor
him
guy.
for every spring interview. I mean, in 2018, before he played a game at LSU, they brought him all the interviews. Like, they were establishing him as a leader, and he caught 10 passes for 59 yards and no touchdowns in 2018. He at Texas Tech, he had 1,300 yards, I think, or something like that, 80-something. He had a lot of big numbers. And so this guy, he looks big and strong. I think he's going to have a big year.
I think that's the thing that first struck me about C.J. Daniels. I didn't realize he is as big as he is. I didn't realize, like, just physically. The other thing, well, I don't know, Jock, like, I'm not out there with a stopwatch to know what he runs in the 40 top-end speed, but I think the thing that strikes me about Daniels is he looks polished. He creates separation. Josh Reed was great at this. He created separation by putting his foot on the ground, his change of direction. Jarvis Landry was like that as well. I think that's kind of what C.J. Daniels reminds me of, his body control, his ability to get separation because he's a precise route runner. It will translate with C.J. Daniels. Like, I had one scout tell me that Daniels will be a day 1 or 2 pick in this spring's draft. So you're talking top 100 pick, and he looks the part. It's really just a matter of how many opportunities can you get in this offense with so much talent around you.
Another guy who disappointed last year, Aaron Anderson, only had 12 catches for 59 yards. I know a lot of people were excited when he joined the team. Now, I don't know if he just never was healthy or what the deal is.
That was a big part of it.
But hopefully this year, he's a bigger contributor. And look, Chris Hilton last year, 13 catches. That's the most catches he's had. Great parents, great kid, and everything. Just pulling for him to stay healthy, like we talked about. And another thing as we wrap up, this is I guess we can talk about the running game maybe to finish, but it's interesting. It's just kind of forgotten, and obviously I don't think they're going to be like really missing him. But last year they talked about running back by committee, and Logan Diggs pretty much took that thing over. I mean, nobody else was getting carries in the heart of that schedule. Arkansas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Auburn. He was averaging about 100, 110 yards a game during that stretch.
Yeah, Diggs was their best guy, but you had Jaden.
Yeah.
So how different would it have looked if Jaden wasn't running for 1,100 yards? I talked to Garrett at Media Days, and he was talking about like everything he learned. He was grateful for the opportunity to sit behind Jaden to learn from. I said, did he teach you how to run for 1,100 yards? I mean, it's just, you got to understand, like those 150 rushing attempts that Jaden had, I think that was about the number or whatever it was, the 1,100 yards, like all those attempts are going to somewhere else this year. So while you may not have a guy that's produced at the level Logan Diggs even had at Notre Dame, like you've got a couple of veteran guys in Emory and Josh Williams, but Caleb Jackson's the wild card, Jacques. Like if you give that kid 150 carries this year, is he a 1,000-yard rusher? Maybe, and I think that's going to be the really interesting thing to see is who emerges there. Among the running backs, and you just can't afford to lose anybody because you only got 4 scholarship backs.
Yeah, Trey Holly's still in limbo, and one thing too, Matt, that we've seen a lot of is just that could be some of their bread and butter is that just dumping that ball off to him out of the backfield, that little 5-yard out, little flare pass to a guy who weighs 235 pounds. Whit Weeks felt the effects of that the other day.
Ooh, man! But that's why, Jacques. I mean, even if I think back, you'll remember like the 07 and 11 teams. You had such depth at running back, right? It was so hard, but there were guys that were so talented. It happened in 11 with Kenny Hilliard. Like you just saw, even as a freshman, he was so good. You had to get him on the field and get him reps. Mm-hmm. And I think that's even if your intention is feed Josh Williams, play John Emery. I think Caleb Jackson is so dynamic that when he's on the field, it's going to be impossible to ignore. And I think you're going to see ultimately as the season moves along, his attempts go up.
All right. It's been a long discussion. Hopefully it's been an entertaining one. LSU plays, as Matt and I are sitting here, they play a football game 2 weeks from Sunday night. As we know, unfortunately, LSU has not won a season opener since Joe Burrow was the quarterback in Tiger Stadium. That was that Georgia Southern or
Georgia Southern?
Georgia Southern, yeah. In Tiger Stadium. And so opening behind the 8 ball every year has been an unfortunate tradition. Real funny story real quick. John Brady one time told me, we were talking in 2020. Remember
you have to do the voice.
Yeah. KJ Castillo came in, remember Mississippi State. And I remember Mike Leach, the great Mike Leach, would after the game said he didn't understand why LSU kept pressing. We just kept throwing over the top. And KJ Castillo, kind of like, who was it, Kenny Thill or whatever, was like a Heisman leader for like 1
from
week.
A&M, yeah.
Yeah, 628 yards, this guy. So later in the year, I saw John Brady at the gym, and he goes, who's that quarterback from Mississippi State? He ain't even on the team no more.
It's true. Well, I don't know, he got benched. He didn't make it through the month. He went from Heisman frontrunner, SEC record against LSU to being benched a month later.
Yeah, that was wild. So
the Bo Pelini experiment.
I don't know what this team's going to be, honestly. I mean, if you ask me how many they're going to win and everything, I'm not good at predicting things anyway. I always joke that I'm glad I'm not a weather guy. I tell people the scores after.
Yeah.
Not
pretty
before.
Good gig.
But 10-2 would get them into the playoff.
I don't know, Jacques. I think it's how the 10-2 looks. For example, if you lose to Ole Miss and Alabama and you go 10-2, and they end up 10-2 or 11-1, you lose a head-to-head tiebreaker against them in the eyes of the committee. You may be on the outside looking in. And it's interesting. There's a lot of fan bases that just assume, Jacques, Bama, Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri, LSU, Tennessee, they all think they're getting in. All of their fan bases, like,
right.
Again, 7 SEC teams aren't getting in.
Yeah.
So not just the record, but how the record looks. I think it's got to be the right 10-2 to get you in. But really important to beat Ole Miss on October 12th, because if you win that one, you'd have a head-to-head and an assumed tiebreaker with Ole Miss, and I think that's the one that would get you in.
Yeah, we're not going from 4 to 60 for the NCAA basketball tournament. We're going to 12, and that's a good point. I think people maybe think it's a lot bigger and wider than what it is. So,
you know how many times in the playoff era since 2014, LSU in the penultimate rankings, right, the rankings that would determine who's in the playoff, do you know how many times LSU's been in the top 12 since 2014?
Not in 15, not in 16, not in 17, 18 yes, 19 yes, 20 no, 21 no, 22 maybe, no, okay, and 23 no. So twice? All right.
And in good job. And in 2018, they were number 11. So they would have been right on the fringe at 9-3.
My brain is fried for the rest of the day. Don't ask me to do anything.
So the point is, man, you assume you're going to be there because it's 12. There's a lot of teams assuming, but history shows you about once or twice a decade, once every 5 years, LSU pops and has that season. It'll be interesting to see if this is the one.
Matt Moscona, thanks for stopping by.
My pleasure, Jacques.
You can catch him on After Further Review.
Jacques.
You can't win with freshmen's.
No, you can't.
3 to 6. Catch this guy and on the Facebook and the X and all that stuff.
The Facebook and the X, all the things.
All the small things.
Well, hey, I just wanted to tell you while I got you before you go, I was a big fan of Ducey's Wild, and I would love to see Ducey's Wild come back sometime. I had a lot of great nights, or maybe a great night, on the porch over at Walk-Ons watching Ducey's Wild.
That was it was a cover band that I attempted to. What did Han Solo said? Everyone has delusions of grandeur. I thought I could front a band, and I did it for a year and a half. The working title was Ducey's Wild, which became Soundbite later, but I'm still in a group text with those guys, Avery Davidson, Matt Totorich, Eric DeSanto, and they want to do a reunion. I'm not in the physical or mental state at this point to do that, but maybe one day.
Do we have
charity.
video still somewhere of this?
Somewhere it's buried of me trying to sing and having too many Crown and Cokes at the Mellow Mushroom and screaming into a microphone, keep on rocking in the free world.
So good.
I think we opened with the Eagles' Get Over It. You know, some random songs. Green Day, When I Come Around, Foo Fighters, Learning to Fly.
You need to learn Deuces Are Wild by Aerosmith, so that way Ducey's Wild, Deuces Are Wild, you play the song that essentially is your namesake.
There you go. Aerosmith no longer around. Steven Tyler and company pulling the plug, and we got a Red Rock and Blue show if you're watching this before August the 17th at the Texas Club. Aerosmith band, Bon Jovi band, and Guns N' Roses band. So thanks for stopping by, Jacques Talk. We'll see you next week.